My name is Celine Cuddihy and I am from Wales in the United Kingdom. I attended church from the age of 12 but it wasn't until I was age 19 that Jesus became real to me. I had spent a year searching for all the things I thought I needed, like success and beauty, popularity, and after this I found myself mentally and physically sick, without direction and feeling like I'd achieved nothing. I didn't know what I should do. I remember kneeling down on the floor and praying, God, if I give up on university, is that just giving in? And he said, no, it's giving in to my will for you. And that was the first time in my life I'd ever heard God's voice. In that moment, my whole life changed. I realized that Jesus is alive and he is a real person that I can know, and that he wants to know me intimately, like I'd know a friend. I realized that I either gave him my whole life forever and surrendered to his plan, or I gave him nothing at all. And I realized that he loves me. So right then and there, I told Jesus that he could have my life forever. From that moment on, everything changed. I remember where I started out in this journey of discovering the Jewish roots of my faith. I started university over again, somewhere else, and I was living with this amazing young woman. She was from a Christian family, but she had this love for the Jewish people. One day when I was cooking, we began talking about Christianity and Judaism. She commented that Christians and Jews worship the same God, but I passionately and ignorantly told her that she was wrong. My reasoning was that Jews didn't worship Jesus, and if someone wasn't worshipping Jesus, then they weren't worshipping my God. I had no idea that many Jews do actually worship Jesus and see him as their Messiah. And I didn't see Jesus as Jewish like she did. Then after that, I attended a missionary training school in Mozambique that summer. We were privileged to have Don Finto and his spiritual son Todd come and teach us all about God's heart for the Jews and for Israel, and explain that God has had a plan since the beginning of time to have one family made up of two distinct people groups, Jews and non-Jews that follow Yeshua. I remember repenting that day in class for what I'd said to my friend and how wrong I'd been. As if that wasn't enough to change my mind, the Lord placed me with this Jewish nurse. I was volunteering on the medical team at the base, and he placed me with this incredible Jewish nurse. She was born in France to a Jewish father and a non-Jewish mother, and her and I were partners together in everything. We would sit for hours and she would tell me her story of how she found Yeshua and what it was like for her growing up. I grew in my understanding a lot. I also grew up with a mum that has always loved Israel and has understood way before I did that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. Fast forward and I arrived in Victoria, Canada. A year previously I had been there as an exchange student, and I felt the Lord telling me to go back and to stay with him there. So I went, and I was praying that he would make a way for me to stay, but also show me why he wanted me to be there. Shortly after I prayed that, my friend asked me to lead worship with her at a local house of prayer. And I went there, and that day I met the directors of the house of prayer, who are also pastors in the city of a Messianic Jewish congregation of non-Jews and Jews who follow Jesus. All of a sudden it became clear to me why the Lord had brought me there, that he wanted me to learn about his family and what it's supposed to look like, and his heart for to have this family made up of both Jews and non-Jews who follow Yeshua, and his love for the Jewish people and for the land of Israel, and about Jesus's Jewish identity. The people at the house of prayer, they had an understanding of Jesus's identity and of the desires of God's heart that I had never come across before. What I came to realize during my 5 months there was that Jesus is Jewish, and this matters. It's important because he's a real, alive person who chose to come to earth as a Jew. He chose to come to the land of Israel. God is not a God who breaks his covenant or changes his mind. He's faithful throughout all generations, and so therefore he has not abandoned the Jewish people. What we can fail to recognize sometimes as non-Jewish believers is that Jesus is first and foremost the Jewish Messiah, and he always will be. So I'm the kind of person that has to focus on the main thing. I don't get sidetracked easily into lesser issues of religion or politics or anything else for that matter. I'm extremely focused, and for me, everything in my faith has to come back to Yeshua, to our Jesus. So why is what I've been talking to you about important? Well, what is following Jesus all about? Loving him with everything that I have inside of me. I believe that I am alive on this earth to know Jesus completely and to love him with every fiber of my being. The greatest commandment, to love God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second greatest commandment, to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Well, how can I love Yeshua with everything I am unless I want to know everything that he is? When you're in love, you want to know everything about that person. You can't just ignore a part of who they are or say that their heritage or their culture doesn't matter to you. If Jesus is Jewish, then how can I not let that be important to me? How can his people not matter to me? And if his greatest desire is to have a family made up of two very distinct groups of people, and to have those two groups of people love one another sacrificially, then how can I not make that my mission as well? How do we know this is the desire of Jesus' heart? John 17. Jesus' last departing prayer. It's what he asked the Father for. That those listening to him then, the Jewish people, and those who would believe in him through their message, the non-Jewish people, that they would all be one, even as Jesus is one with the Father. In the chapters leading up to John 17, Jesus commands his disciples to love one another in every single chapter, beginning in chapter 13. Discovering the Jewish roots of our Christian faith is all about loving and knowing Yeshua. It's easy for us non-Jewish believers in Jesus to dismiss the thought of understanding our Jewish roots and think that we are better than the Jews because we know Jesus is the Messiah, when the truth is they need us to show them their Messiah. Paul in Romans chapter 11 and 12 says to the non-Jewish believers in Rome to remember and not forget that they are grafted into the Jews and into the Jews' spiritual blessings, and not the other way around. The Jews are not grafted into us and our spiritual blessings. He tells the non-Jewish believers not to think of themselves more highly than they ought to. Let us not forget that message today, as I think it applies to us now more than it ever has before. Bless you guys.